Hello everybody and welcome to episode 8 of All the Mod 7 to the Sky. In the last episode I had a little play with occultism to make one of the empty soul gems. That in turn was used to make the dragon soul. I also invested in Ars Nouveau for the first time. This is to produce a pretty unlimited amount of piglet charts. This thing is still running and, well, it's going to stop running now that this is full, but it's a lot of piglet charts. I also built this monstrosity to try to help with the netherrack and endstone production. Since we're using these as a sieving material, I need these in quite high quantities, and this was the way that it was the solution to fix everything. First thing I'm going to set up today is automated HDPE production. Automating these is actually quite easy. To automate it, I'm just setting these machines to auto input and auto output to the top side, which is going to be a pattern provider. This will result in all of the inputs and outputs being on that top side, making auto crafting for this really easy. And the reason why I'm auto crafting this instead of setting this up on passive is the ethylene, we don't really need to be using that for power production. We're going to be building a fission reactor from Mekanism at some point today, and that's going to basically be the ultimate power generation for us. I'm also going to take care of the auto crafting situation. I've run out of slots in the pattern providers, and the solution to this is just to add more. So I'm going to upgrade the ME system by adding a couple more P2P networks and isolating them, and then having 3 columns of 32 pattern providers for a total of 96 pattern providers and 96 molecular assemblers for a total of 432 pattern slots. I now have space for all of these patterns in the molecular assemblers, as I'm starting to get to a point where all of the pattern providers are filling up. I would next like to start getting a little bit into ProjectE. This mod is to do with energy and transmutating matter into energy, hence the name EMC, Energy Matter Conversion. I've already set up automation inside this crafter here. This is to craft alchemical coal, Mobius fuel and Aeternalist fuel. I set this up a little while ago in the hope that I was going to use ProjectE for something else. And then I decided against it. So this has been just sitting here waiting for me to actually do something with it. So this transmutation table, if you place it down pretty much anywhere, doesn't matter, it will display this GUI. And at least in this mod pack, not everything has an EMC value. So I'm just going to put platinum in here for now. We now have a million EMC. I can take the platinum out if I get another type of ingot. For instance, all of these ingots currently have EMC. I can teach all of these to the transmutation tablet, and then I can pretty much take out any of these and convert that platinum originally into iron or lead. Really useful. The main use for this though is actually going to be just to store energy in the Klein stars. The Klein stars are just act like a battery for EMC. I'm going to craft up the biggest size Klein star I can make. And I'm sorry if my voice sounds a little bit weird. I think I'm currently experiencing a bit of a cold. It's not the greatest for recording and also not good timing for me. Anyway, the Klein star has finished. I can now place this in the transmutation tablet and it will absorb the EMC currently in this tablet and will store it inside the Klein star. And the reason why I want to be storing EMC in my inventory is because I want to make a Swiftwolf's Rending Gale. If any of you know the mod ProjectE, you will know that this gives you access to creative flight at the cost of a small amount of EMC. So instead of using the jetpack, it has to be in the hotbar. It will allow me to have creative flight. Yeah, at the small cost of a little bit of EMC. Plus it also makes this is the iconic noise from ProjectE. I love this noise. That is the details out of the way. I would like to start looking at getting this fission reactor running, because to get the Nexium Emitter, I need Polonium. I actually have everything else now. The netherite, I have enough netherite scrap. I left the server running for a little while. That's why I have enough. So it's just Polonium I need. Yeah, to get polonium, it's the nuclear waste processing. But yes, to get the nuclear waste, we need a fission reactor. So I'm going to need to set up fissile fuel. You've got to love a recipe like this. This is proper chemistry up here, which I need to set up. It's like 8 machines. I will actually count how many it is in total once I start setting it up. Not as intense as GregTech's chemistry though. That is chemistry on another level. I've just tried to figure out the spacing for some of these machines. I basically want them so that they're going to be in line with the fission reactor in this area, which I have planned out. So this will be a 15 by 15 by X amount because of the height. It doesn't really matter how tall I build it. I think this is going to work. So underneath here, depending on what I'm actually crafting, like this one, I'm going to set this one up to be charcoal production. Exactly like this is how I'm going to have it set up. So this is now just producing charcoal blocks. Next, I'm going to have a pressurized reaction chamber built in this slot. This will start producing sulfur for us. Next is to add the chemical oxidizer to start producing sulfur dioxide. Listen to that hum. I actually need this to be changed to a chemical tank since this is gas. It won't actually go into any other fluid container except for these chemical tanks. I'm next going to be combining sulfur dioxide plus oxygen to produce sulfur trioxide in a chemical infuser. Water vapor is nice and simple. It's just made by putting water in one of these rotary condensators set to decondensating, deconcentrating, that's a fun word. Sulfuric acid is made by combining the sulfur trioxide plus the water vapor in a chemical infuser. Hydrofluoric acid is made in the chemical dissolution chamber with sulfuric acid plus fluorite. Yellow cake is made in the enrichment chamber with uranium ingots. Nice and simple. Uranium oxide is made in the chemical oxidizer using the yellow cake, which we're producing using uranium ingots. Next, combining the hydrofluoric acid plus uranium oxide produces uranium hexafluoride. And lastly, the fissile fuel, which is made in the isotopic centrifuge. This is the entire processing chain for making fissile fuel. It's a few machines and fun automation setup. I've set this up in a way that it's going to be expandable in the future. So all I need to do is build the machines vertically and add the correct filters for them, and I can increase production here. For the moment though, this is going to produce fissile fuel probably it's not going to be a one-to-one, like all of the machines aren't going to be continuously running, but later on I can make it so that they are all running. Oh, and did I say these consume an insane amount of energy to be able to make them running, to be able to keep them running. They draw over 100,000 RF per tick per machine, I think. Some of these use that much. Now it's actually time to build this reactor. The size of the reactor, which I'm going to be doing, is a 15 by 15 by 18 tall. It's basically the max size which you can actually make one of these fission reactors from Mekanism. Fission fuel assemblies are going to be 17 tall plus the control rod assembly, which has to be inside the reactor. Compared to the bigger reactor, the control rods have to be placed on the top layer with the casing. For the mechanism ones, it has to be placed inside the reactor. Yeah, this is the footprint for the reactor. So it's going to fit perfectly within, if I enable the chunk borders, this chunk. On a side note, I had to change the height of this. It's still a 15 by 15 on the base, but the inside is now 16 tall instead of 18, because the max size of this is 18 tall, so it must be 16 tall on the inside for it to still work. So the fuel rods and control rods, I'm using one control rod with 15 fuel rods stacked on top of each other. I'm also going to be using these fission reactor logic adapters. With the reactor done, I'm now going to start building the turbine. Turbine size which I'm going to be using is also going to be a 15 by 15, although this one has to be built slightly different because of the turbines. Okay, so as I was building this turbine, you can see that I'm using reactor glass. I am currently using the wrong type of glass, but I didn't actually say anything. The correct type of glass for this turbine is structural glass, and I did swap it out later on in the episode, but I just didn't record me swapping it out because it was my own mistake and didn't think that it was necessary. The rotational complex shouldn't be placed like this. I have also placed this incorrectly. The electromagnetic coil should be above the rotational complex, not on the same level as them. So this turbine actually needs to be one block lower to accommodate the rotational complex plus the electromagnetic coils. So do as I say, not as I'm doing here. And the pressure dispersers which I'm now placing, these need to be on the same layer as the rotational complex, but because the error which I made, the rotational complex is actually on the layer of the electromagnetic coils, which is wrong. The turbine vents can be placed on the same layer as the pressure dispersers or above the pressure dispersers. They can't be placed below them, otherwise the multi-block won't work. It would help if I actually had the height of this set properly. A lot of side notes when building this thing, but it's going to produce quite a lot of power once it's actually up and running. I'm also going to make another tank which is going to store water for this. I realise that this isn't really necessary for you to do, and it's not necessary for me to do it either, except I'm going to be using this as a throughput regulator for water. Well, not really a throughput, I'm going to use it as a buffer. I wonder what everyone's going to think of this. So what this does, I will explain it for all of you. This storage bus here will act as an output for water. So when this redstone signal emits, it will enable this toggle bus, allowing water to be stored inside this dynamic tank. The ME system uses a storage bus to report how much water is actually in this tank to enable this level emitter. It will enable when 32,768 buckets is less than to fill up this tank. And this should make it so that it never overfills and there's always space for fluid from the turbine coming in here. Now I've just set the output for the dynamic valves. all of these mechanical pipes are going to be the output, and we'll insert fluids back into the fission reactor. Now all we need to do is bring this mechanical pipe underneath to the reactor. To configure the outputs for this, you need to wrench this fission reactor port. Green is for the input, which is what I want. That should fill the reactor up with water, and visually this reactor is going to actually start filling. So how cool is this? It will slowly fill up. Next, I need the reactor output for steam. These need to come out using the pressurized tubes, since the steam is actually considered a gas in Mekanism. And for this, I want all of these to be set to output coolant. Now I just need to route this pressurized tube into the turbine. This will then force any steam into this turbine. Next, I just need to connect all of these turbine vents to mechanical pipes. This will be the output for water, which gets condensed from the steam once it's basically been used to generate electricity. And yes, I'm going to have to configure all of these to output the water back into the interface. Reactor's nearly full of water. I'm also going to set the burn rate to this for 1 millibucket per tick. That doesn't really need to be anything higher at the moment, and I will be increasing it later, but for now that's good. I'm going to next set this fission reactor port to be the output for waste. This one is going to import fission reactor fuel. I can do this by just placing an export bus on here, set to fissile fuel, and then connecting this to the mainnet. Then fissile fuel is now in the reactor. Now I get to build failsafes for this, since, well, from my experience when I've built reactors in the past before, they have a tendency to go wrong when the coolant gets too low, so I'm going to fix that. So if you can remember, I already built one of these. This is an AND gate, but this is for pink slime production. So what it checks is when there's 1,000 buckets of meat and 1,000 buckets of pink slime, it will turn off this spawner. As you can see, the light in here is turned on. If one or both of them are low, it will turn back on to fill up. I want that for this reactor, except I want two differences. The first one is going to be checking if this is empty, this induction matrix. And to check if this is empty, I can just do induction port on here, set to output energy. This will now emit a redstone signal based on the energy level inside here. I'm going to set this comparator to subtract. So this will subtract 13 from the redstone signal. Basically, once this redstone signal gets above 13, so 14, it will output a redstone signal of 1, which I'm then going to send it into a wireless transmitter from Create. Did I say I'm going to have one AND gate? I'm going to actually have 3. Then the middle one is going to be controlled by the other 2. My reasoning for this is I want this to have proper failsafe activity. So one of these redstone signals is going to be coming from the redstone link. This is going to be set to this frequency. Yeah, so this is going to be the first failsafe. This is reading the energy currently stored in the induction matrix. The second level is going to read how much water is in this tank. So this is going to be set to emit when levels are above or equal to limit, and this is going to be for water. That is going to output into a redstone link. I will set the frequency reactor casing dynamic tank for water. I will then place this one here. Set the frequency. That's now the second failsafe. So this is set, as a recap, this is set to read the energy currently being stored in the induction matrix. If that's less, and it's basically got room for storage, this will turn on. If the water level is above 8,192 buckets, this will turn on, allowing a redstone signal to pass through, which turns off the first one. The second one, I want this one to be set. So I'm going to have one of these set to output a high temperature, output a redstone signal when the reactor reaches a high temperature. And I'm also going to have one of these set to output a redstone signal when there's excess waste. So if the waste tank gets full, it will output a redstone signal and turn this off. I'm also going to use these redstone P2Ps because I haven't actually used them. That should disable that one. Okay, now in theory, this should work. I'm a little bit afraid to turn it on. I'm hoping that everything will go okay. I mean, it shouldn't explode, so should we give this a go? It would help if I configured the reactor logic adapter properly. Okay, that's scary. It's on. It's heating up. Okay, it's producing steam. So it's producing nearly 20,000 millibuckets per tick. It's producing 80,000 RF per tick. Okay, I've just muffled that sound because it is quite loud. So it is running. Well, let's up the burn rate to like 8 millibuckets per tick. So it's producing 8 times. Ooh, it turned off. Oh, it's the water. Yeah, see, this is why I want this. Because it drained the water tank. It drained the water tank and then turned off. So I think it did that because this can't store enough water. Post-editing Jude here. It's come to my attention that I forgot to add the saturating condensers inside this turbine. They go above the pressure dispersers, but below or around the electromagnetic coils. They're required to turn the turbine's steam back into water. I don't know how I managed to forget to add these to this turbine, but I did, and I thought that I should definitely address it to everyone that they are actually there now. Now that I have this reactor set up, I need to start setting up waste management for this. And to do so, I'm going to set up one of these solar neutron activators. For this, I just want to basically output the nuclear waste from the ME system. That will then be sent inside this solar neutron activator and then produce polonium for us. Polonium is used for them polonium pellets, which is also used for this Nexium emitter. I'm going to first store it inside of this nuclear waste barrel. Yep, that's currently being pulled out. This will then output straight into a radioactive waste barrel filled with polonium. I'm next going to add this radioactive waste barrel. This one is going to be for the spent nuclear waste, as that's a byproduct from crafting polonium pellets. And this should mean, if I send the request for a Nexium emitter, I should be able to craft it. Now that I have this reactor set up and it's producing polonium. Let's give this a craft then. Let's see if I can make this Nexium emitter. That's what I was making in the first place. It's just taken a little bit of time to actually get this polonium. Nearly done. Oh, that took a while. One Nexium emitter, the second item to getting the All the Mod 7 to the second item to get the All the Mod star. That's 2 down, 6 more to go. Well, I have had an amazing time building this turbine and this fission reactor with all of you. Yeah, this episode has been super fun. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to call it here now though. I hope you have all loved watching me, and I just wanted to say that I did actually blow up this reactor once before when I was playing. I left the footage out because I wasn't actually recording, but I had to load it back up because it did actually explode. That was because it wasn't chunk loaded. Anyway, I hope you've all enjoyed today as much as I've enjoyed playing, and I hope to see you all again some other time.